At 1:12 a.m., I heard footsteps outside my tent. The problem was, they stopped exactly where my head was. If you spend enough time in the deep woods, you learn the silence has layers. These are 3 terrifying true horror stories from real experiences, where the trees felt too close, the trail felt too quiet, and something out there seemed to know exactly where I was. I camp alone sometimes, not because I'm fearless, but because it's the only time my brain shuts off. Last fall, I drove out to a remote trailhead and hiked deep into a backcountry section of forest I'd never visited before. No marked sites, no bathrooms, no cell service. At the ranger station, the guy handing me the permit looked at my route and said, "That's quiet country." I laughed and said, "That's the point." He didn't laugh back. He just nodded once and said, "Here's, if you hear your name, don't answer." I told myself it was just a creepy ranger joke. The hike took about 5 hours. I found a small clearing near a creek, set up my tent, and made dinner while there was still enough light to see. Everything felt normal. Too normal. That night, the forest got quiet early. No owls, no distant animal calls, just the creek and an occasional gust moving through the trees. Around 12:40 a.m., I woke up for no reason. My eyes snapped open like something had yanked me out of sleep. I listened. Nothing. Then I heard a sound so soft I almost convinced myself it wasn't real. A single step, in dry leaves, just outside the tent. Then another step. Then another. Moving slowly. Not wandering, pacing. Like someone was measuring the perimeter of my tent. One full circle, then another. I lay completely still, staring at the tent wall. I could see a faint shadow shift with the moonlight, but it was too vague to understand. It wasn't a person shape. It was more like a wrongness moving near the fabric. The footsteps stopped at the front of the tent, right by the zipper, right where my face was. I held my breath. For a moment, everything was silent. Then I heard something else. Not walking, not rustling. A faint tapping sound, like a fingernail on nylon. One tap, 2 taps. Then a slow drag, like a hand moving along the tent. My stomach turned cold. So I grabbed my flashlight and clicked it on. The light turned the tent wall bright, but it didn't show me anything except the inside of my own fear. I didn't unzip the tent. I didn't speak. I just waited. After about a minute, the footsteps started again, but now they were moving away. Slow, patient steps, like whatever it was had accomplished something. I stayed awake the rest of the night, listening to the forest. At 2:13 a.m., I heard it. A voice. Not loud, not close. Somewhere beyond the trees. It said my name, clear as if someone was standing just outside the clearing. My chest tightened. I remembered the ranger. If you hear your name, don't answer. So I didn't. I kept my lips shut and stared at the darkness. A few seconds passed. Then it said my name again. This time, it sounded closer. Not by distance, by certainty. Like it knew I was awake. My throat felt dry. I forced myself to breathe slowly. I didn't answer. Then the voice changed. It stopped sounding like it was calling me, and started sounding like it was repeating me, like I was practicing the shape of my name, over and over, slightly different each time. I stayed still until sunrise. The moment there was light, I stepped out of the tent and scanned the ground. There were footprints, barefoot, human. They made a slow circle around my tent. Then another. Then another. Like a path had been worn into the leaves. But the strangest part was the direction, when the prints were facing the tent, not walking around it. To make those circles, whoever made them would have been walking sideways, keeping their body pointed toward my tent the entire time. Like they never looked away from me. I packed everything fast. As I left the clearing, I checked behind me. The woods looked normal again, but I could feel something watching. Not like a predator, like a person who didn't want to be seen. About 20 minutes down the trail, when I found something I couldn't explain. A second campsite. Old, forgotten. A fire ring with ash that looked fresh, but there were no recent tire tracks or footprints leading in. And on a tree near the fire ring, there were scratch marks. Long vertical gouges, like someone had raked the bark with something sharp. Then I saw the message, carved into the tree at eye level. Just 4 words. Don't say it back. I didn't hike. I ran. And I never camped alone again. This happened on a trail I'd hiked dozens of times. It was a loop trail in a wooded park about 40 minutes from my house. Popular during the day, empty after sunset. I brought my dog, a big shepherd mix who usually acts fearless, even around strangers. We started around 6:30 p.m., planning to finish before dark. The first half was normal. Then my dog stopped, ears up. Head turned slightly, like he was tracking something behind us. I looked back down the trail. Nothing. No hikers, no lights. I tugged the leash gently, and he followed, but he kept glancing back every few steps. I tried to stay calm. Animals move in the woods. Deer, foxes. But the look on my dog's face didn't match a deer. It was the look he gets when someone is too close to the car window. Concern. Alert. Ready to bite. We kept walking. Then I heard footsteps. Behind us. Soft at first. Matching our pace. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I started again. They started again. I turned around quickly. Trail was empty. I could see a long stretch behind us, and there was no place someone could hide without me seeing movement. My dog started a low growl I'd never heard from him before. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It was a warning. I kept walking, faster now. The footsteps behind us stayed perfectly in sync. Not catching up. Not falling behind. Just pacing. I stopped again. No sound. I took one step. One step behind me answered. I told myself it was an echo. Leaves. Branches. My imagination. Then the trail did something that made my stomach drop. The part behind me looked different. I don't mean the lighting. I mean the trail itself. A tree that should have been there wasn't. A bend that should have curved left looked straighter. A dead log I remembered stepping over was gone. It was subtle, like the forest had been rearranged by a few inches, but it was enough to make me feel like I was staring at a copy of the same place. My dog refused to go forward. He planted his feet and pulled, trying to turn around, so I listened to him. I turned around to head back. The moment I turned, the footsteps moved too. They weren't behind us anymore. They were ahead of us, on the trail we were now facing, walking away from us. But there was no one there. My dog yelped and tried to bolt. I grabbed his harness and held him close. I could hear the footsteps moving away, like someone walking just out of sight. But there was nothing to see. Then the footsteps stopped, and the forest went dead quiet. No wind, no insects, no distant road sound, just silence thick enough to press against my ears. Then I heard my dog's collar tag jingle, a soft metallic sound, right behind us. But my dog was in front of me. I turned slowly. Nothing. But the feeling in the air changed. like the space behind me was crowded. My dog started whining, backing into my legs. I forced myself to keep moving toward the parking lot. We walked fast, almost jogging, and the whole time, I heard footsteps beside us. Not behind. Beside. Like something was walking exactly where the tree line met the trail. Close enough that if it stepped into the path, it would be inches away. But it never stepped out. It just stayed in the shadows. We reached the parking lot right as the last light faded. I opened the car, threw my dog inside, and locked the doors. I sat there breathing hard, staring at the trail entrance. Everything looked normal again. Then something moved. A shape stepped just far enough out of the trees for me to see legs. Bare legs, pale, too long, not bent right. The knees looked wrong, like they were too high, like the proportions weren't meant for a human. It stood there for 2 seconds. Then it stepped back into the woods, not fast, not scared, like it was finished. I drove home with my hands shaking. A week later, I went back during daylight with a friend. We walked the same loop. Everything was where it should be. Trees, logs, bends in the trail. But when we reached the spot where my dog had stopped, I saw something on the dirt. A line of footprints. Barefoot. Deep impressions. But the stride was wrong. Each print was separated by nearly 6 feet. Like something had been walking. Or like something had been hopping. I didn't take a picture. I didn't post it. I just left. Because part of me felt like taking a picture was the same as inviting it back. A friend of mine has a family cabin deep in the woods, no neighbors for miles, a place they go to unplug. Last winter, he invited me for a weekend. 2 of us. A couple days of quiet. Fireplace. Snow outside. The drive-in took forever. The road turned into gravel, then dirt, then something barely passable. No street lights, no signs, just trees and the car headlights. We got to the cabin around 8 p.m. It looked normal. 1 story, wood exterior, porch light. Inside was warm, clean, and familiar in that old family place way. There were 2 bedrooms, a living room, kitchen, bathroom. Simple. We ate dinner, played cards, and drank a little. Around midnight, the power flickered once. My friend said it happens sometimes. Wind, old lines, not a big deal. We went to bed. I took the bedroom at the end of the hall. He took the one closer to the living room. I fell asleep fast. Then I woke up to a sound I couldn't place. A soft knocking. Not on the door. On the wall. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps again. I sat up in bed. The tapping continued. Slow and deliberate. Not random. Like someone trying to send a message. I listened for my friend. No movement. No voice. Just tapping. I got up, walked to the door, and opened it quietly. The hallway was dark, but I could see faint moonlight coming through the living room window. The tapping stopped the moment I opened the door. I stepped into the hall and waited. Nothing. I walked toward the living room, thinking maybe a branch was hitting the exterior wall. Then I noticed something that didn't make sense. The hallway felt longer, not by a little, by enough that my stomach tightened. There was more darkness ahead of me than there should have been. And the air smelled different. Not like wood and smoke, like damp soil, like the smell you get when you open a basement that hasn't been opened in years. I turned on my phone flashlight. The beam stretched down the hall, and at the far end, there was a door that wasn't there earlier. I stopped, frozen. My brain tried to catch up. 2 bedrooms. Bathroom. That's it. No door at the end. But it was there. A plain wooden door, slightly darker than the others. I told myself it had always been there, and I just didn't notice. But I knew that wasn't true, because earlier, I'd walked this hall to put my bag down, and there was no door. I took a step toward it, then the tapping started again, but now it wasn't on my wall. It was coming from behind the door at the end of the hall. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. I whispered my friend's name. No answer. I walked to his room and knocked. Nothing. I opened his door. His bed was empty. The blankets were pulled back like he'd gotten up. I felt panic creep up my spine. I called out. No response. The cabin was silent except for the tapping. I turned back toward the hallway. The door at the end was still there. And now my phone vibrated. A text from my friend. From the living room. It said, "Don't come out." My breath caught. I typed back, "Where are you?" He replied immediately, "On the couch. Don't move. The hallway is wrong." I stared down the hall. The door at the end was slightly open now, just a crack. Darkness behind it, thicker than the rest of the cabin. Then something happened that made every hair on my arms rise. A whisper came from behind the crack in the door. Not a word I could understand. More like breath shaped into sound. And then it said something in a voice that sounded like mine. It said, "Hey, come here." I didn't answer. I didn't move. The door opened a little wider. The darkness behind it felt like it was spilling into the hallway. Then, from inside that room, I heard a sound that wasn't tapping anymore. It was footsteps, but not on wood, on something soft, like wet leaves. And they were coming closer, slowly, deliberately, as if whatever was inside was testing how loud it could be without making me run. I backed into my room, shut the door, and locked it. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the doorknob. I texted my friend. "It's at the end of the hall." "There's a door that wasn't there," he replied. "I know. I saw it too." Then another text came through. From my friend, but the message preview looked wrong. The contact name was the same, but the number was missing, like it was coming from nowhere. The message said, "Open the door." I stared at my screen. Then my friend's real number texted, "Do not open anything. Do not respond to any message." My phone buzzed again. Another message. "Open it." Then, another. "We can't sleep." I turned my phone off. I sat on the bed with my back against the wall, holding my breath, and through the door, in the hallway, I heard footsteps stop right outside my room. Then the tapping started again, this time on my door. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Then a voice, very close, soft, calm. My voice. "Let me in. I'm cold. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stared at the door handle. The handle slowly turned, just a little, like someone was testing it. Then it stopped. Silence. For a full minute, nothing happened. Then I heard it move away. Footsteps toward the end of the hall. Then a faint sound like the door at the end closing. The cabin settled back into normal silence. I stayed awake until the first hint of daylight. When the sun came up, I opened my door. The hallway looked normal again. Short. Familiar. No door at the end. Just a blank wall. My friend was in the living room, pale and wide-eyed. He hadn't slept either. We didn't talk much. We packed quickly. As we were leaving, I glanced down the hall one last time, and for a second, I saw something on the wall at the end. Not a door. A mark. A faint outline like a rectangle, darker than the wood around it. As if something had been there long enough to leave a shadow. We never went back. A month later, my friend told me his dad sold the cabin. When I asked why, he said his dad admitted something he'd never told anyone. That cabin had 3 bedrooms when they bought it, but they boarded one up years ago. Because at night, someone would knock from the inside. The deep woods don't always need to chase you. Sometimes they wait. Sometimes they copy you. Sometimes they build a place for you to step into. So, if you ever hear footsteps around your tent, or feel the trail shifting behind you, or find a door that wasn't there earlier, don't investigate, don't answer, and whatever you do, don't say your name out loud.